Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to create this modern 3D abstract website. We'll do both code and no-code development. To render the background video, we'll be using Blender. If you don't have Blender installed, please visit the link down in the description and download it. Our tech stack will be pretty simple, just Next.js for the front end and GSAP for animation. We're not going to do anything crazy with React, so anybody can follow along with the tutorial. You don't need any prior existing knowledge of these technologies, but having at least some sort of baseline will help. These types of websites cost upwards of $5,000 to $10,000. Now, let's first start with the 3D render. But before we continue, if it's not a hassle, please follow me on Twitter for design and development tips and my Dribble for design inspirations. As I said, having extensive knowledge on how to use these technologies is not required for this tutorial, but knowing how to navigate in your viewport in Blender is imperative to know. So let's begin. So first we delete everything that is not the default cube. So basically select it, press X and then delete. Then select the cube, press SX and then 8 in order to increase the size on X axis. Then Shift D to duplicate, right click, and then press the move tool and put this duplicated object on top. Then let's increase the bottom object because this will be basically our flooring, increase the size of it, that is. After which, let's increase the height of our duplicate cube here. Press Tab, then go to Face Select, select the face, select the move tool, and then increase the height of it, like so. Next, let's create the cutout for our object here, basically the arc that we'll have in the render. Press Shift A, search, and let's put a cube here. Put the cube relatively where we want it to be, off center to the right. Then in order to cut this cube from this object, select this object, go to the modifier tab, press Add Modifier, search, and select Boolean. Then press the eyedropper tool and select your cube. Right now nothing is happening because the cube is still visible, but if we hide the cube by pressing these two buttons, we'll see that it's cutting out from the object. Let's unhide it. Now we need to modify this object slightly. Let's increase the Y size of this object. Then let's go to the edit mode. Again, face select, then select the top face, increase the height, then press edge select this edge, hold down shift, select this edge, and then press Ctrl B to bevel. When you like the amount of bevel, start scrolling on your mouse, like so. And when you will have enough, just press the left mouse button. Exit edit mode with tab again. And right now, if we hide this object, we'll see that we have our arc here. Now, select the object here. Let's add a little bit beveling. So add modifier, bevel. Right now, the bevel is kind of wonky. In order to fix this, just press Ctrl A and then apply scale. And everything works out. Then select the floor and slightly increase the Z-axis, like so. Let's create our camera in order to see how our render will look. So Shift A, search, camera. And in order to easily rotate and move our camera, press N and we'll see the properties of this object, in particular this camera. Let's first zero out every rotation axis. So basically press Shift, keep holding Shift, drag on these properties, and then press 0, and every one of them will be modified. Then put this camera in front of our object and rotate it on its x-axis by 90 degrees, like so. Increase the height. And in order to see what our camera is seeing, select our camera and then press 0. Now, right now our camera is pretty close. Let's move it a little bit farther, like so. And let's also modify our arc as well. Let's increase the size of it a little bit so we have much more space to work with. And right now, you may think that this is properly aligned. But because of the fact that our camera is looking at the center, we'll be much better off if we slightly rotate this object by its z-axis. So just press R and then Z, and then rotate slightly towards the camera. Now when we hide it, the arc looks much better. I'm going to slightly adjust it a little bit more here. There we go. You can adjust it however you like. Now let's create our main object, the abstract sphere. So press Shift A again, search, and search for UV sphere. Place it relatively at the center of the arc, like so. Look in the camera in order to center it properly, like so. Press Ctrl 2 in order to subdivide it, and add subdivision for the viewport at 3 and for the render at least at 6 or 5. Then let's add the displacement modifier. Press New, then edit this displacement by pressing this button. Then select Wood. And right now it's way too aggressive, so let's decrease the strength, like so. Let's add another modifier, Simple Deform modifier. And let's twist it, like so. Then do a right click, Shade Auto Smooth. And it's relatively smooth now, despite the fact of having less geometry. Now let's add our orbit. In order our orbit to be at the center of the sphere, let's move our cursor to the center of this sphere. So press Shift S and then cursor to active. Then Shift A, search, and what we want is torus. And let's edit this. Do not press anything else. And let's edit the torus geometry right now by increasing the minor segment. Let's increase the major radius and decrease the minor radius, like so. And let's also right click, Shade Auto Smooth. Let's add our little planets on here as well. So again, Shift A, search, and let's do again UV sphere. Decrease the size significantly. Let's go to the top view by pressing this Z. Let's also view in the wireframe mode by pressing Z as well. And let's move this to the orbit here. Let's look on the front and put it relatively where the orbit is, like so. Let's go back to the solid view. Let's decrease the size and also right click, Shade Auto Smooth, like so. Now let's duplicate this sphere. Right click again, then put this on top and decrease the size with just pressing S. Duplicate one more time, put it on top, and then S. Now let's duplicate these planets. Go to the top again, then Z, wireframe, duplicate them 2 times by Shift D, with the Shift D. Go to solid view again. Let's select all of these spheres right now. Select the torus last and press Ctrl P. And with this, right now, every single object is parented to the torus. So when we rotate the torus, everything else rotates with it. Let's increase the size of our cutout here one more time, like so. As you can see, there's some missing geometry here. So in order to fix this, press the wall itself, Shade Auto Smooth, and also the same thing to our cutout object, Shade Auto Smooth, and hide it again. There we go. Now let's start with shading. Let's go to the shading tab. And right now our environment is pretty dull. Let's have some sort of environment to light the objects that we have in the scene. So press World here, and then do another Shift A, search, and Environment Texture. Put it here, and I'll drop the PNG for our environment texture in the description. So open and navigate where you saved the HDR and connect the color to the color. Right now we are not seeing anything because we're in the material view. We have to go to the render view. And as you can see, the environment is not lighting our objects pretty well. So let's increase the strength a little bit. And in order to make it a little bit more vibrant, let's add a saturation node between the texture and the background and increase the saturation slightly. And in order to have much more contrast, go to the render tab, go to color management, select, instead of AGX, select Filmic, and afterwards in look, select high contrast. And as you can see, we have much more colors, much more contrast. Now we need to rotate this HDR slightly because the most interesting parts are right here. So if you have the Node Wrangler add-on, so if you don't, just go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and Wrangler. So just turn this on. And if you have that on, select your texture, Control T, and as you can see, we can rotate our environment texture. So we can do any type of rotation we want. So let's look inside our camera by pressing 0. So let's rotate it so that there's a lot of clouds there. Yeah, like so. Now let's shade our object as well. So select our object, go to the Object tab here, press New. Let's make it metallic and decrease the roughness ever so slightly, like so. We don't need any fancy materials for the walls and the flooring. So let's go back to our layout and let's add our water here. So Shift A, add a plane. Position this plane relatively where we want the water to be, like so. Go to the Modifiers tab, add Modifier, and add the Ocean modifier. As you can see, it's quite large. So let's decrease the size of the Ocean modifier, like so. Let's increase the spatial size. And let's also scale down a little bit the waves and also zero out the smallest wave. And let's also have some repetition for this wave. First, let's decrease the size of it a little bit so we can have a little bit more detail. Increase the scale of the wave again. And then let's increase the repetition on y-axis so that when you look into the camera, the water itself does not have an end. Let's also move it slightly to the right and increase the repetition on the x-axis as well. There we go. Let's go to the shading as well again. Select our plane, press New, and again, nothing too fancy, just increase the metallic, decrease the roughness, and maybe add a little bit of color to the water itself, like so. Let's put it a little bit to the top here. Now let's put the camera a little to the top by selecting camera, pressing GZ, and putting it on the top a little bit. Also our water as well. There we go. Now, in order to have a little bit more interest, let's also duplicate this and create a platform that goes through the camera. So duplicate this, rotate on the Z-axis, and move it towards the camera, like so. Let's look at our viewport, move it to the left, and decrease the size on the X-axis. So we have something like this. Now let's add our own lighting here. So again, Shift A, search, light, and let's select Spotlight. Move it to the top left corner. Take this yellow sphere here and navigate it towards the object here. Right click, adjust light power. Let's increase the strength of the light ever so slightly. Let's see how everything looks. Looks great. Have a little bit of intrigue on our object. And let's also duplicate this and modify this here in the data tab and make it an area light, but decrease the light power slightly so that our spotlight still has more power than our area light. Let's see how everything looks again. Okay, now we can start animating our scene. So our animation is going to loop. So in order to have a looping animation, the end frame and the start frame has to be the same basically. Let's make our animations 200 frames. Select the sphere first, go to frame 0 and add a keyframe to the Z rotation. Insert single keyframe, go to the last frame, type in 360, right click again and insert single frame again. Keyframe. And right now our end frame and our start frame and our end frame are exactly the same. So if I press space here and the animation goes, as you can see, it seamlessly loops. But right now our animation timing is off. As you can see, it slows down at the end. We don't want that. We want it to continuously rotate without any change in time. Another panel here, just go here between the panels and just drag it to the left. Press this icon here and go to Graph Editor. Decrease the size of this. As you can see, this is the easing of our frame. In order to have a continuous frame without any easing, press A to select every frame. Then do a right click, interpolation mode, linear. And right now, our rotation will be continuous and seamless without any easing. Now let's rotate our orbit as well. Again, the same process goes. Press the Z for the rotation, insert single keyframe, again on frame 0, go to the frame 200, type in 360 again, insert single keyframe, and again, right now it rotates, but we don't want the rotation to have any easing. So again, select your orbit, then go here, press A, right click, interpolation mode, linear. And as you can see, both of them right now are rotating. Now, in order to have a continuous loop of our ocean, it's a little bit tricky, but not too hard. In order to have an animation for the ocean modifier that is seamless, we have to have two ocean modifiers, one for generative and one for displace. So first, let's animate the displace. Basically, let's make this time 0. Press this small little dot here to add a keyframe. Go to the last frame and put it 1. Add your keyframe again. Again, go back to frame 0. Zero out the scale of the wave. Add a keyframe here. Go to the last frame and add your previous scale here. And again, press this diamond in order to add a keyframe again. In order to loop this, we have to duplicate this modifier. Make this displace instead of generate. Then add a frame here with time and add the time to 1. Add the frame here. Make the scale the same as we have it here. So basically 1.060. like so, add the frame here, go to the last frame, zero this out again, and same goes to the scale as well. And right now, both of these ocean modifiers are looping the water seamlessly. Now the only thing left is to render our animation. Let's look at our viewport one more time, in the render view of course, press space, and as you can see our water is animating, our sphere is also animating seamlessly. Let's move our water a little bit to the top, somewhere here. And in order to render this, go to the render tab, go to the output, select the desired location you want the video to be. Afterwards, instead of PNG, select FFmpeg video. You don't need anything to do in the color management and or the encoding. The only thing you need to change is to put the output quality to high quality. And that's it. Then you can press render and render animation. This won't take a lot of time if you have modern hardware because we're rendering in Eevee. So I'll render out this animation and we'll use the output MKV file in our website as background. So before we start developing the website, let's at least create the basic design for what we're going to create. So first, we are using our background video that we just rendered. We'll have some sort of generic logo on the top left here, after which we'll have some sort of quote-unquote tablet news element. We'll also have a tag element to indicate what type of news this is. We'll also have a heading. This heading will have SF Pro display font, some paragraph, some call to action button, secondary button, some stats to show off the potential growth of the business, and also customers. Now that we have the basic layout of the website, we can start the development phase. In order to create our Next.js projects, we're going to type in npx create next app latest. We're going to name the project something like 3D website. We're going to use TypeScript, we're going to use ESLint, we're not going to use Tailwind CSS, we're going to write our own styles. We're going to use the source directory, we're going to use the app router, and also we're going to use the import alias. And we're going to leave the import alias as default. Now that our boilerplate is created, now we can visit the directory and install all the dependencies. We're going to also install GSAP and GSAP React. And now we can open up this project with VS Code. When we first open up our project, we are going to import some of our static assets like our videos, our images. So let's go to our project, go to the public folder, and let's paste in our fonts folder, which contains the SF Pro display font. Let's also paste in our images folder that will contain the company logos and the stat image. And let's also paste in our render here as well, like so. After which, let's create some of our smaller components, like for example, our button, our tablet, and such and such. Let's first create a lib folder in our source directory. In this lib folder, we're going to have a components directory, globals directory, and also styles directory. We're going to move our global CSS in the styles, like so. In order to define basically our reset, we're going to remove all of this. We're going to paste in our reset CSS here. This is just generic stuff that we should start with. And also we're importing fonts.css. And the fonts.css will be inside the styles as well. And we're going to have a generic font face import of the SF Pro font. Let's save this. Let's save this as well. Let's go to our layout.tsx and change the global CSS directory. And we're going to go outside, then in lib, then in styles, and then global.css. We're going to remove the Next.js font import because we don't need it in this case. Like so. And we're going to remove all the unnecessary code in the page.tsx. like so. And let's start creating our small components first. So let's go to our components folder. Let's create tablet.tsx and also tablet.module.css. But before we start with creating our elements, it will be beneficial for us to create the icons for our website. So let's create an icons directory. And in this icon directory, we're going to create arrow, logo, and stars. These are the respectable SVGs that are imported from Figma. Now let's first create our tablet element. So let's just import our CSS module, some of the icons here. Let's also have our HTML attributes from React so that we can specify the default props that a regular HTML div element will have. Let's define some classes here. This logic here is for if we ever add any additional class name to this element. Let's also add the tablet tag and also the tablet content. And on the subject of CSS, we're just going to paste in very simple to understand styles for the tablet here. Next, let's create the button component by creating button.tsx and button.module.css. And again, we're going to import our HTML attributes, our button module CSS, then create a generic interface for our button that also extends the button element, and our button component itself. Let's paste in our CSS as well here. Right now, we're using two styles for our button. Depending on the props of what the version is for this button, this class will change and it will adapt with our CSS. Now let's create our global navigation by creating navigation.tsx and also navigation.module.css. And our navigation is generally simple to understand, just main navigation wrapper and also a container, and inside it there will be a logo here. Let's paste in the styles for it as well, like so. Now let's start creating the main page itself. First, let's define that this is a client page. Because of the fact that we're going to use animated elements, we're better off just making this entire page client-side. Let's define some imports as well. The tablet import, the import for the CSS module here, the navigation, button, arrow, and the Next.js link. We're going to also, as I said, use GSAP for animation, so we're using GSAP and use GSAP from the GSAP React library. Let's define the home page here as well, and also add our use GSAP to animate every element that has the class of animated intro. Basically, GSAP here will set the opacity to 0 and the Y transform to 10, and it will basically animate by staggering all the elements that has the animated intro here. So let's also add our component itself. Let's add the main class to the main tag. Let's create a section for the hero section, and also let's not forget the navigation. Let's add the video background to our website as well. Let's add the left side content that we have on the website, the image of the stats that we have, and also the company logos. And for the CSS for our main page, we're going to paste it here in our page.module.css. There's nothing complicating happening here. You can just copy this code from the repository itself. And as you can see, we're using CSS nesting. CSS nesting is relatively supported right now, so we're going to utilize it instead of SCSS. So let's save everything, and that's it. Right now we can turn on our server here by typing npm run dev. And when we visit localhost 3000, of course we have an error. We just need to define the global CSS path correctly here. Let's go to our layouts.tsx and define this correctly. And the only mistake here is that we define not global, but globals, plural. And if we visit localhost 3000, we see that our website is perfectly normal. And if we refresh, because of our GSAP animations, everything is animated using our staggering. The styles right now also support mobile, well, kind of. The video has to be re-rendered for the mobile view. But if you guys are also interested in creating the mobile version for these designs, please let me know in the comments down below. Now let's start our no-code development with Framer. So when you first open up Framer, you'll see a single frame that is 1200 pixels. But for our design, we're going to resize it to 1920 by 1080. And this is the size that we're going to work with. First, we'll start with just importing our render, like so. Then we're going to put this in a frame by pressing Ctrl, Alt, and Enter, or just right-click and add stack. Sorry, we added to a stack. Now let's add our text content. This text content is relatively simple. It's just inter font, extra bold, and completely black and 82 font size. Let's add this to a stack as well by pressing Ctrl Alt Enter. Let's add a paragraph in the stack. Right now our stack is horizontal. Let's make it vertical. And let's also add our button, like so. Let's make sure our stack is not completely wide. Right now it's 100% wide. But let's make it auto width, meaning that it will only take the amount of space it requires. Let's align everything to the left. Let's slightly adjust the padding. Sorry, the gap between the elements. And right now we want this content to be on top of this video. So select the stack and make it absolute. Unfortunately, we're not seeing our content. We just need to relatively reposition this, like so. And let's change the overflow behavior of this to visible, so we can see the shadow. The shadow for this button is also relatively simple. It's just a realistic shadow with these parameters, and also a simple shadow with these parameters. Let's add another button here. Let's just duplicate them, add them to a stack as well. Make this stack horizontal. Also changing the distributions to space between. Let's decrease the size to 90%. Let's remove the background for this button and also remove the shadow with it. And let's add our arrow just by copying the SVG and pasting it inside our stack here. And let's change the text of this button to see more, like so. Let's again remove the overflow behavior of hidden and make it visible. Let's add our navigation as well. Copy the navigation logo, paste it in the frame, put that into a stack with Ctrl Alt Enter, and make this stack fixed. And put this stack on the center and on the top of the frame, like so. Let's increase the padding by moving this handle. Let's change the distribution to start. And let's increase the padding. And let's increase the left padding slightly. After which, let's add our stats. And our stats will be also absolutely positioned. Move that relatively here. Let's add a shadow to this. And let's make it realistic. Add our shadow color. Move the opacity slightly. Put the Y at 17. The diffuse to 1. And focus to 0.45. Now let's create our customers section. Let's import all of our customers' logos. Select all of them, Ctrl Alt Enter, make them horizontal, and increase the gap between them. Also, let's make this stack obsolete. Let's move it to the top. There we go. Right now, if you preview our website, it relatively looks perfect. But we also would love to have some sort of animation for our content here. So let's do that. Select all of the elements that you want to animate. Go to Effects, Appear, then go to Effect, Transition. Let's do an ease transition. Increase the bottom half, decrease the top half. And right now we want to stagger this animation. Let's make all of them right now time of 0.4 or 0.5. And now let's select each of our elements and add a bit of delay to them. So select the paragraph, add 0.2 delay, then select the first button, add 0.4, and then let's add the final delay of 0.6. So now, if we visit the preview, we can see the elements are animated. Right now, this is a very quick and easy tutorial on how to build this in Framework. But of course, you can add more details, add more breakpoints so that this is mobile responsive. And if you like this content, please let me know if you want me to also create the mobile version for these designs. Thank you everybody for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please put a small like, or better yet, subscribe. Have a wonderful day, evening or night, wherever and whoever you are. And again, thank you very much for watching. Bye.